Hi everyone, welcome to SkiDD Data Protection. Today we will be talking about what actually processing means. It's the core term of the GDPR. So let's tune in. What is processing personal data? There is a key definition supplied in the GDPR. I will read it to you. Processing means any operation or set of operations which is performed on personal data or on sets of personal data, whether or not by automated means such as collection, recording, organization, structuring, storage, adaptation or alteration, retrieval, consultation, use, disclosure or transmission, dissemination, or otherwise making available, alignment or combination, restriction, erasure, or destruction. So you see there's a very, very large catalog of what actually processing of personal data means. Where do I have that definition from? Again, I would recommend that you buy a code, or you can also just Google the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, in the internet. Maybe you type in GDPR PDF, and then you can retrieve the original PDF in whatever language you need. There is not only the English version, there are many versions available by the European Commission due to the cause that there is not only English as language in the European Union. Where do I find that definition? It's Article 4. So here you see Article 4 and then subsection 2, and there you find the definition of processing. So probably you will be a bit lost right now because you will be asking yourself, okay, so I just got that huge definition, but what does that actually mean for me? So maybe let's look at 5 examples that I prepared for you today where we do have the processing of personal data. So a very general example that usually always applies when you're a business owner or a startup is the collection of an IP address. Now, many of you will say, why is an IP address a personal data at all? I will be uploading a separate video on what is actually personal data, and then you can compare whether it falls below or not. So the IP address is considered, so that's the result already taken before you will look and watch the other video. An IP address is considered personal data. It's considered therefore personal data if less than 5 people use the exact same IP address. So let's give an example. You work for a company and they provide internet access for the entire company and the entire business premises. For example, you have 2,500 employees all working at the same premises, and they all dial into a client with the exact same IP address. So for them, the IP address would not be considered personal data. But if you're just a homeowner and you have an internet access, then that IP address would be considered personal data because it can be directly linked to you as the owner of your internet access. So now the collection of that IP address would be considered personal data. Where is it being collected? For example, if you watch or you visit all the social media websites online, or you have all the cookies, then not only those cookies will be installed on your device, but they will be also collecting your IP address. Another example that I want to share with you today is the storage of data in data centers. In my work, in my daily work, I saw a lot of cases where people told me that, yeah, they only store data in a data center. So they don't have any access to that data, and it's not considered personal or processing of personal data from their point of view. I'm sorry, it is concerned and considered processing of personal data, because the mere access or being able to have access to that data in that data center is considered processing of personal data. And also another argument is that in the definition that I read before, it says directly and strictly that storage of personal data is considered processing of personal data. Another example I want to share with you is the remote access to personal data. So maybe you have a business and it's maybe a startup, and now you have a contract with a service provider that offers technical support. What that service provider obviously will do, because he or she will not always go to your premises and then offer their technical support, they will probably have remote access to, or have a remote access client on every employee's computer, and then will access their files and the computer via that remote access. Now, they will then probably, if you deal with personal data, have access to that personal data in such a form as they can read that personal data. Since they are considered a third party when regarding the processing of personal data, it does fall under a transfer of personal data to a third party. We will be looking at transferring and processing data by a third party in a separate video as well, so keep and stay tuned in. So the mere access is considered transfer to a third party, and that would be also considered processing. So the second last case I want to present to you, an example I want to present to you today, is taking a photo on a vernissage, for example. Also that, the mere taking that photography on a vernissage would be considered processing of personal data. Now, you do have to always keep in mind, as I mentioned in my video, what is GDPR and does GDPR apply to me, that if a photo is being taken or if you process personal data for personal use, then, and it's a home use, then the GDPR would probably not be applicable. Now, there are other laws that would apply to taking a photo of a person without their consent, and that would not be then a GDPR problem. That would be rather intellectual property, and the right to a photo would also be breached. So this is something else. Always keep that in mind. So it wouldn't be a GDPR problem, but it would be a different problem. Now, the last case and last example I want to share with you today is you upload a video on YouTube, and that video shows several people and they maybe discuss, or it's just a video from an event. Now, by uploading that video to YouTube, that would be a transfer of personal data to YouTube, and that also would be considered processing of personal data. So as you see, we just described some examples where they probably apply to many cases, and those are probably the examples that are the most common when processing personal data. Obviously, there's so many others, but I just wanted to share with you some examples. So if you have other questions, whether an activity is also considered processing of personal data, you can just leave me a comment. Please always keep in mind that you always have to seek separate legal advice. So this would not be legal advice that I would be supplying here. So I hope you liked this video, and please press the like button and subscribe, and see you next week. Bye.